Hello again. Today what we're going to go over is sheep handling skills, and it's one of those things that a lot of people probably aren't very proficient in and make the probably come to the wrong conclusions that sheep, because of their size, have less likelihood of getting you hurt. And I don't think that's necessarily true. I think when you study the ethology or the behavior of sheep, there's a couple of things that need to remember. And one is they have tremendously strong flocking instincts, so they like to be kept together. Today, probably our biggest challenge in this is handling rams. And a lot of the safe handling of rams is how you deal with them on a regular basis. And unlike other animals, most times danger comes from their familiarity with you. Rams become real aggressive. Some of them do, some of them never do. But the big thing about them is never physically handle them. One of the great mistakes people make is they pet them. And huge mistake, especially with rams. If you start to touch them on the head, you need to understand their natural behavior when they interact with other rams is they establish a pecking order, and typically they'll smack heads with each other in establishing which one, can inflict more pain on the other one. Do not touch the top of their heads at any time if you decide to keep them for breeding sheep. Because that fires them up. Most injuries that I've ever seen that deal with rams are people that make the mistake of touching them on the head, and then you go into the pen with them and you've already started to rev them up in behavior to that, and they'll drop their heads and try to put bruises or worse than that all over you. So that's what you need to remember. The danger zone on rams is that they will butt you or ram you with their foreheads, and they're strong in that regard, and their skulls are an awful lot thicker than yours are. So what I attempt is never to touch them, and I encourage my students also the same thing, leave them alone. But the thing also to remember is if they're very close to you, you're out of their danger zone. If you physically have got your hands on them, you're probably okay. If they've got a 10, 12, 14 foot area in which to pick up speed before they hit you, you don't want to be in one of those positions that you're trying to play matador out there and dodge their assault on you. So with him, my intent is I will go in there and catch him, but I've got to monitor his behavior as I go in there. As I said, if I can get my hands on him, then he's not going to be able to hurt me, okay? After that, if I have to deal with him, I'm going to put a halter on him, I'm going to tie him up to something that's real firm and stable. Now, I can flip them, turn them over, trim their feet, give them medications, whatever else, but it's the catching part that tends to become the most likely to be dangerous. Again, the gate is open on that. He may decide to let me go ahead and catch him, and he may decide not to, in which case, we'll put him into a smaller space where I can get to him more easily. Now I monitor his behavior, and he hasn't started to put his head down. My intent with him, as I said, once you've got your hands on him, you're in control. And I always tell students this, it's like football, right? The reason that face masking is illegal is the neck is not a tremendously strong muscle. If you've got control of someone or some animal's head, that's why we invented the halter. You pretty much got control of the animal and you've got their head, okay? One hand here under the bottom side of the jaw, the other one is around his head. There's no way that he can rush me as long as I've got a hold of him, okay? With that in mind, if I walk him up just a little bit where I've got a halter, and I've always put the halter somewhere that it's easy for me to get to, okay? And you want the halter to fall behind his ears and across the bridge of his nose, okay? And there it is. Now if I've got this, I've pretty much got control of him, and I can kind of get him to do what I want. One of the kind of smaller points, and this is going to be hard to demonstrate with the range that you're in, is to properly tie him up in a position. Now, if you're going to tie him high like this, understand that he probably can't lay down. So you don't want to leave him tied in a position like that, especially on days like this that are as warm as they are. But for you to need to work with him or examine or anything else, if you have to do this stuff by yourself, you've got to figure out the easiest and safest way to do it, okay? He's confined to that spot right there. If I had to check him in any way, if I had to medicate him, if I had to administer an injection, if he was sick, or vaccinate him, he's pretty well secure right now. But the kind of knot that you tie, and people that have been around livestock forever, horses included, you don't want to tie a knot that you can't easily, quickly get them out of. In case there's a wreck, they fall down or something else, you don't want them to not be able to breathe or whatever else. So this knot is secure, but if I need to untie him, I quickly pull the rope in the opposite direction and he's free, okay? Okay, so anyway, there he is. And as a ram, as I said, he's got some age on him, and he's by far the most aggressive ram that we've got. And so you always have to keep that in mind. If you're going to work in the pen where he is, I always restrain him and tie him up or put him into a different pen, because he will wait until your back is turned, and then there's the possibility that he may take a run at you. And probably something that needs to be mentioned, if you haven't thought about it a bunch, in small spaces they can move probably faster than you can, so you have to keep that in mind. The big thing on injuries that they can be sustained by sheep if you don't have them restrained, and again, as I said, it's almost always going to be a ram that's going to cause these problems for you. Obviously, I always try to avoid getting hit in the knees if that's at all possible, and I've done this an awful long time, and I've been injured an absolute minimum amount of times, and you can keep yourself safe if you just practice. Keep this always in mind, understand their behavior, and we'll go through, when we go through cattle in the next segment of this, we'll talk about how do you read what is their normal behavior. And at the time of year is always critical too. If you've got a ram that's in with a bunch of sheep, and he's breeding frequently, his level of aggression may go down, but he also may want to defend the sheep the ewes that he's got with him too. So you have to keep that always conscientious and keep that in mind, okay? All right, we're probably done with him. So again, I'm standing right next to the gate, so I can take the halter off this guy, but I've still got control of him, right? The halter comes off, I've got him right here. He decides to be a jerk about anything. On the portion that you've got right now on restraining sheep, if you have to work on their feet or something else, once you've got your hand on them, take one hand to the back leg, turn the head in, and down they go. Once you've got them in a position like this, if you lean them far enough back where they can't get their feet underneath them, they're relatively helpless. Get your body in a position that you're standing somewhat upright. That'll be easier on your back. If I needed to work her feet from a position like this, I pretty much have access to all of them, whether it happens to be hoof trimming or something else. And they really are immobilized when you've got them sitting back on their butt like that. There's a number of ways to get them onto that, but that's probably the easiest. When you've got sheep that are as heavy as you are, that probably requires the least amount of effort. Thank you.